Political correctness versus inclusion. Is it better to look the part or be the part?
How dare you?
Attention goes where energy flows.
How absolutely dare you, sir?
If you can't hold a public group accountable, then what's up with group rights?
Bigot.
Without free speech, there is no true thought.
Typical white male.
Like the Venerable Admiral Akbar would say, it's a trap.
It's ma'am.
Welcome to the Epoch Podcast, your weekly dose of mental foreplay. I'm Matt, your cisgendered straight white male host.
I'm Jen.
I'm Austin, just a white male Christian.
I'm Joni.
I'm Christina.
I'm David.
I hope everybody caught there that that Jen's normal. Not offensive at all.
This is perfect.
I'm a white female and I feel normal, so I'm good.
And this week we're talking about political correctness.
Yes.
Conversation we're having.
It's true.
So I think we're going to dive in where no other political correctness videos that we're aware of go, and that's into what actually is political correctness.
Right?
Who's got that definition?
It's a trap.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, all the stuff that I found, YouTube, blogs, also, I mean, it is largely a definition that nobody has the guts to like sit down and talk about just that. So, I mean, Google does, apparently.
So the official definition, according to Google, the avoidance, often considered as taken to extremes, of forms of expression or action that are perceived to exclude, marginalize, or insult groups of people who are socially disadvantaged or discriminated against.
Well, I found a
offensive.
definition. I found a definition in YouTube comments.
Nice.
Someone said it was saying something vague that nobody will get upset about while hiding your true thoughts.
Nice.
JP Sears made a pretty good video about it. Right? Name?
What did you say?
JP Sears,
JP Sears?
Oh.
super
It was
spiritual.
not a funny video either. He was like,
Oh, really?
yeah. I was like, what?
Oh, that guy that does those. Yeah, okay. I know who
Yeah, how to be super spiritual.
Uh-huh.
He's getting more and more serious.
Uh-huh.
He has a podcast and stuff.
And he actually got it right. He got the point of what political correctness is, or somewhat is. And,
Tread lightly. I feel like you are in dangerous waters here.
well, like, that's why I feel like it's a trap. Because it is a trap. And a lot of people go directly for the
person that looks like a woman but isn't a woman. Is that what you're trying to say?
No. It's
Mm.
they don't. I'm trying to formulate this idea because I can't. I don't.
See,
And that
it's
makes it
difficult.
exciting.
And a lot of people just like the byproduct of it, or there's a term of like you talk about what it is, but you do not talk about what it is. Holy crap! I don't know how to say it.
I would really love to know what you're trying to say.
We all would.
I think for me,
Talk amongst yourselves, and I'll try to.
That's like 3 minutes I can't get back. I don't know.
for me, what I read that really hit home for me was that currently political correctness is all about saying and doing the right things, but it's not really believing or pushing forward in a genuine fashion. Whereas, for example, some people might say, my husband and I went to the store. Well, that might be relatable to about 50% of the population, but there's a part of the population that statement kind of excludes them from relating to me in a sense, because maybe they have a wife and a wife, or a husband and a husband, or whatever. And so when you say something like, my partner and I went to the store, it's being able to connect with everyone on the same.
No, because what about the single people?
That's true. I don't know. I don't, at the end of the day, you can't make everyone happy. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
David with the dynamite drop-ins today.
I think, like, honestly, the only thing that comes to mind for me when dealing with this kind of stuff is it feels like the religious mindset going into secular stuff. Like, let's just make everyone behave, but let's not deal with the underlying problems. Let's make everyone, it's like a surface level thing. And it's to me, it's masquerading as love, but it's really just, let's not let anyone be offended. And that's not.
And it's a choose your own adventure because it depends on who you talk to. And that's what I thought when we set out for this topic. I'm like, oh, I know what that is. I've got lots of opinions on that. And then I started researching it. I'm like, I don't even know what this is. So I'm with you, David. Like, how do you narrow this down?
How do you define it? Because see, that's the big issue. Like there's so many different, it can masquerade as so many different things. Like,
because everyone can be offended about something different.
Or bigotry or whatever. And so people can get offended about anything, to be honest. And so how can you actually nail this down to say, okay, well, that's politically correct or that's not politically correct? And that's the thing. Like, people think that it's all about race and all about this and that one, when it's actually political.
I want to know what
political.
I mean, this is such a big subject that it's kind of difficult to be definitive, right? And it is very much just empirical in your own life. And so I have kind of two questions. One is, am I the only one who's ever been in a conversation and had to wonder if I'm using the right words to make sure that I'm still conveying my point, but I am being as least offensive as possible?
Austin, every time I talk to you, I feel like I have to like dance around your sexual and ambiguity.
Ambiguous?
Wow.
I have to dance around that word too.
Yeah, it is. Anyway.
I feel like I more often feel like, oh crap, what did I just say? More than like, and then I'm like, wait, what company am I in? Am I okay? I don't know.
Was I supposed to abbreviate that word with the first letter and the word after it?
And the other question I have is, what is the goal?
Yeah.
Like, what is the goal of it? Because I was thinking about it as we were kind of getting ready for this episode. Like, it really is, any discussion about political correctness to me has to include a massive discussion around emotions and emotional fortitude. Because let's be honest, the offendedness of the world only has a hook on anything that actually has something you don't fully settle in as being something of your identity. So I use the example of, if I said you were the ugliest dolphin I've ever seen, like, it doesn't offend you because you just think I'm stupid, right? You're not a dolphin. And even if you were, what's the definition of an ugly dolphin to a human? Like, it's just so far from truth that it doesn't hold any hooks and it holds no value. And so the closer you get to things that people are struggling with internally, emotionally, identity-wise, that's where you start getting to these issues of political correctness. So obviously you get things like race or sex or sexual orientation or belief systems, because we have been abused, and everyone has had their pet moment. That, and I've called that on previous, I know I've called it that on my New Age Christian podcast. You have that thing that happened to you, or that thing that you grew up in a family that had this particular, obviously an easy one would be the color of your skin. So you grew up within a family that had non-white skin in a white country or whatever. And the point is that you kind of are conditioned to a sensitivity in that area. And therefore, that sensitivity now becomes the thing that everyone else has to know you have. Everyone else has to be aware of that. And if you're in your own world and in your own head and you're not even thinking about it, and you say something innocent, suddenly you're immediately branded as a bad person, and you're immediately branded as a bigot or whatever. And now we have a culture where now we're all conditioned to that abuse. And political correctness to me has become the ultimate expression of an abusive use of word that it's now becoming the thing that we've all been offended by at one point, right? Or is it just me?
Sure. I mean, there's definitely two things I want to fire back with that. And there's that, first, I'm pretty sure there's probably like a dolphin LARPing community that's like furries that you probably offended there.
Probably.
I identify as a dolphin.
They can't be furries if they're dolphins, because dolphins aren't furries.
Dolphin LARPing community like
They're mammals, so I think
which we went to was it Red Robin not too long ago, and there was like furries everywhere.
Because it was a convention.
Which is nothing wrong with that. Also, it feels to me like people have seen somebody weaponize offensive words, and there's like a power struggle in that. Okay, well, you're going to weaponize those offensive words. Well, I'm going to weaponize my offendedness, and so it's me taking back power when I'm offended. Yes, so it's power struggle.
That's a quote.
Because I mean, technically speaking, like, would either of you guys have any sort of grounds to be offended, since you are both straight white males?
No.
Consider.
You mean as in like, could they have anything to say about anything?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, no, but like they have no right to be offended.
Right. Also, that context.
Because you guys are. See, this is one of the things that I watched this video by Jordan Peterson, and this is one of like the things that he was saying. Like this, he attaches, or he says that the political correctness is actually a mixture of Marxism and postmodernism. And so, like, the video is fascinating. I mean, I think we should totally, I'll make sure it gets on the library, but he breaks it down, and so like the thing there is like it's weaponized, and it's just a way of them of the, I want to say the left, but I mean technically speaking, I think both sides are actually using it now, probably. Of expressing resentment, of taking control of the conversation now, and
Sure.
that's the way that they take control of it.
And I certainly think that you're right in that both sides, I'll put in air quotes, sides, are using this, and then trying to call, it's like the pot calling the kettle African American.
I think you mean coffee without milk.
Con pepe?
The video that JP put up was probably, and I actually did see another video saying the same thing, but instead of trying to work with this fake compassion or whatever, that is what political correctness is now, because let's face it, it's fake. Nobody, like, they just say it because people speak a certain way just because they don't want to get in trouble, but they don't really mean it, or they might not really care about it other than not getting in trouble. And he said, instead of being politically correct, let's be kind. This whole situation gets taken care of if we are kind to people, if we treat people the way that we would like to be treated.
I wanted to take it back to Austin's question about the why are we doing what we're doing. And I had not recently, it was like a year ago, I went to a training in the education field where it was kind of like a conference where a bunch of people from the area came and we were having a speak. And so the teacher at the beginning was like, okay, you need to introduce yourself, where you're from, what's your title, and then your pronouns. And I'm like, my pronoun? My what? And he's like, let's start off. My name is Joe Smo, and I do blah, blah, blah. And my pronouns are he, him, and whatever the other male pronoun is. And I was like, okay, we're doing
whatever.
that. I was fortunate enough to be the first one to go. So I was like, my name is, because I don't know, I've never done anything like that before, that like to say what my pronouns are, because like,
what are pronouns?
What are pronouns? But like, I'm her, she, and I can't remember their third one. What's the third? Whatever. So as we go through the class,
His?
Boy, girl.
No, like her, she.
Hershey.
I don't know. So anyways, not important to the story that much. There's about 35, 40 people in the room, and we kind of go back and forth the rows. And then the last person in the back corner happened to be a male by birth, but clearly not identifying as a male. And so this exercise for this gentleman, man, woman, sorry, they.
We're going to get banned. We're so good.
Right. I'm sorry. I mean it in the genuinest way. This activity was for him to be able to speak his truth and say, you know, I'm her and she, and she said their name, did their spiel, and then didn't even say the pronouns. Like, you could tell he was more uncomfortable saying the process than I was, I'm a female. I'm okay with that. And so it goes back to this why, like, we're calling out this political correctness to like give them more power and more confidence. And some of them, I'm sure, are very cool with, yes, this is who I am, and call me they, please, or whatever. But there's a lot of them that are still trying to figure it out, and they don't want to be put on the spot to say, well, what pronouns do you wish to use? And that's the why to me. I was like, what is the why to this? What is the purpose of this? And I couldn't connect in that experience why we were doing it.
I think most people would say the why is to have a more fair and equal society. The problem is so my opening hook was where attention goes, energy flows, or where energy flows, attention goes. And so when your attention is on how different you are, that's where your energy goes. And if you understand the universal law of attraction, or the universal law of vibration, there is, and this is where you get people like Morgan Freeman, who says, how do we deal with the race problem? Tell you what, you stop calling me a black man and I'll stop calling you a white man, right? And some people in the black community love that, and they're like, yes, exactly, just call me a man, right? Call me whatever. And then you get a bunch of other people that have built an identity around race. And there is, there's some people on depicting a subject. I think of like the black race subject, and there are people such as Al Sharpton, who he would be out of a job if there was no racism, right? It's no different than the pharmaceutical company. Do you really want to heal people's diseases when that's your profession and your multi-billion-dollar companies? There's probably a lot more benefit for you to keep things perpetuating so that you can actually have your fame and your fortune. And so, and that's on every subject. This, cancer research or whatever. I mean, just pick a subject, and you're going to find that where energy goes, attention flows. And so, and that is to me one of the things I've done that for a while. One of the things that I, in my research for this, come across a couple accepted terms inside of the clinical psychology world, and one of them is stereotype threat, right? And this story you're telling, Jen, is very similar. It's a little bit different application, but the idea of stereotype threat is that they did these tests where you would have people take, like, one was a math test. Actually, I like the miniature golf one the best. So they had the test was miniature golf, and they told two different control groups nothing. They just said, have miniature golf, and then they told one group that it was a test of natural athleticism, and all of the black guys did way better, and all of the white guys did worse. Right, and then they did it again with another group, and they told them that it was a test of something, problem solving, creative problem solving, and all the black guys did worse, and all the white guys did better. And their idea was that the stereotype bias that blacks are athletic and whites are smart type of thing, that when people who hold those stereotypes are told that they're going to be tested, the pressure of not proving the stereotype right actually lowers the performance of the people who are doing the thing. So they did one with math on men and women, and they told them, one group, they said that this test doesn't, it actually proves that gender inequality in math skills doesn't exist. And guess what? It didn't. And then another one, they did some comments about how women may not be as good at math, and guess what? They weren't. And so the stereotype threat is basically that when you feel stereotyped, it actually proves itself. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because you enter into a fear state of proving the stereotype. And so this individual in your meeting is feeling that stereotype threat in this meeting, and guess what? It creates this energy that they fall into, and I'm guessing in the sense that that's exactly why that person didn't mention it. And based on your version of the story, it seems like there was a threat there to, I'm in this group, and everyone can get there, right? So if you're a Christian in a group of, secular atheists, you feel like, oh my gosh, if I say something stupid, they're all going to judge me, right? And then guess what happens? You probably say something stupid, right? Because you're in that fear response, and you're in that threat of the stereotype that's been put on you. And it doesn't matter what it is. We all have them. And that becomes, you manifest the very thing you're focusing on. And on the broad scale, people who want equality, I agree with Morgan Freeman. Stop talking about the inequality, right? Not to ignore it in the sense of, oh, it doesn't exist, but just literally focus on the positive, focus on something, what it is that you actually want, not what it is that you want to stop. And I could go on for days.
Sure. I want to hit on something that you talked about, just since we're talking about like studies and whatnot. I was taking a contemporary ethical dilemmas course in like 2015, 2016. I can't remember which year it was. But I was crushing it in this course. Like I was, not the average age of the students in that course, but the essays I was writing, which you wrote, I think a dozen of them or so, were literally the example for the first three while she's trying to get things set up. Like 100%. You could, wow. Grade-wise, you got a 0, a 50, or 100%. That's how she graded things. And I was not just 100%, I was the example, like almost all the way through. We got to a week about, I'll just say racism as a general thing. And part of the course for that week was taking a Harvard test where basically they threw up pictures on the screen, and as fast as you could, imagine there's like a 1 and a 2 that you had to press. You had to identify if the person was white or black as fast as you could. And so you do that. And I don't know, it felt like maybe 2 minutes of doing that. And you just kind of just get in this habit of like, all right, white is 1, black is 2, and just as fast as you can. And then the question changed. Put who's good and bad.
Ooh.
Your first reaction. I was like, I've just been conditioned to push this button for white people and this button for black people for the last 2 minutes. And now, like the way it was set up, you were set up to push, white person good, black person bad. And it was supposed to expose your racial bias. It's like, this test is so much bullshit. and so I explained this on in my essay. Can you guess what grade I got?
0.
I got hosed.
Wow.
So just teaching us that we're racists.
There's that touches on the other. So there was 3 principles that I've always thought the political correctness fell victim to collectivism, right? And collectivism is essentially viewing people as groups, not as individuals. And I think that is a travesty to the human reality.
Oh, yeah.
And so like we could go there, and there's tons of stuff on that, and it's a very libertarian reality of individual rights versus collective stuff. And I think Jordan Peterson has some great stuff. I love his, like, one thing, if you're going to give group rights, then how do you hold groups responsible, right? But that's a whole other story. The other one, so I also talked about stereotype threat. But there's another one that I've seen a lot of this too, I'm going to be honest, the most racist people I know are leftists, because everything comes down to it.
Right.
You can't have a story on the news. You can't have any sort of discourse with a leftist where it doesn't come down to what your color of your skin is, what nationality you are, because it is literally their focus. And by the definition, if you are seeing me because I'm a white Christian male, who's the racist? Why does my color have anything to do? Why does my religion have anything to do? Why does my everything? You're saying it should be equality, yet you're the one that's calling me out all the time. And so the most focused, race-focused, and sex-focused, and bigoted people I know are the ones who pretend to not be. And lo and behold, there's a term for that as well. It's called moral self-licensing.
Can I
moral licensing? Go ahead.
This actually touches a little bit on one of the things that Jordan was saying in this video that I watched, because what is, let's say, the underlying ideology of the left? Marxism, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Give or take, communism. And he summarized it in a very interesting way that I had never heard it before, but he said that the basic tenet of Marxism is that you have to have one side that is the oppressor and one side that is the oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that plays exactly into what you're saying, because they always have to be seeing who is the oppressed person and who is the oppressor. And that's why they have to have somebody that's the oppressor, somebody that's the oppressed. And generally speaking, it's going to be the white, straight male that is going to be the oppressor, and everybody else is going to be the oppressed. And they have to have it. They have to have that dichotomy. So that's why they can only see race. They can only see all these people that are being oppressed, because that is the paradigm that they work in.
Well, it makes people feel good. So moral self-licensing, a really surface level example of it is when you're on a diet, right? And you have a salad with a little bit of dressing, and you maybe even go to the gym, and then that night you go, you know what, I was really good today, so I'm going to have a piece of cake, right? And so you do a good deed that makes yourself feel okay to do a bad deed. And so when you spend your entire life using the right words, oh, you are such a good person. You can be a total asshole in your heart. You can be the most judgmental jerk in the world, but if you use the right words, you're a good person, right? And that's where J.P. Sears was. You're talking about that, like well, why would I have to change what's in my heart? Why do I actually just have to be a nice person if I can curse you out with the most non-offensive words? Like, what your mouth says is irrelevant if your heart is not changed. And they want you to change your heart, but they're change your language, and that will somehow change your heart. Actually, it's doing the exact opposite, because moral self-licensing isn't a false sense of like, oh, I did good, therefore I'm good. It is therefore I did good, therefore now I'm justified in being bad. So it actually emphasizes the racism. It emphasizes the negative, because they have lied to themselves and said, well, I used a nice word, therefore I'm not actually a racist. And so it actually makes it worse, because it's a false sense of righteousness. It's a false sense of doing good.
And that's one of the things I was hearing on the debates I was listening to, was people kept asking the question, okay, all this, sure, people want political correctness, but is it working? Mm-hmm. Is it doing what they're trying to accomplish? Is it giving them respect? Is it giving them rights? And I don't think it is. And then it comes down to, it's a freedom of speech issue also. You know, it in so many places it comes down to censorship, that you can't even talk about things But if it's political correctness, then it's okay to censor people, and it's okay to not talk about it. And to, I don't know, I think that's one of the biggest, there's a lot of issues, but freedom of speech is one of the things that we were built on as a country. And now half of our country is getting on board with this and clamoring for, no, you have to use the right words. And it's not just, it used to be you can't say certain words. You can't say the N word. You can't say, these things. But now it's actually becoming, they want to legislate, no, you have to use these words. And that's a really big difference. It's okay to not use condemning words in polite company. But it's a whole different thing to say, no, you're not, you have to use these words in all company.
Does anybody else feel like they've been listening to a Nazi for the last minute or so?
Well, one of the things that I ran across, one of the videos that I watched was just a pretty brief video just talking about the importance of free speech, and just saying that freedom of speech has become freedom from speech. Like, we're afraid of certain words, or we're afraid of hearing opposing viewpoints or whatever. And that kind of ties into my hook today. It was actually a quote from Jordan Peterson, and he was quoting, he wasn't quite sure, I think, who it was. I think Jung, maybe. I don't know if it was Carl Jung, or I tried to look it up, but I couldn't.
He quotes Carl Jung a lot.
Okay, so it's probably him then. And he was saying, people don't think so much as thoughts appear in their heads and they believe them. And so, yeah, and so he was saying, without free speech, there's no true thought. If we don't have the ability to express the things that we think about, we don't have, we're not able to then basically work out our thoughts, or actually think, because everything is just staying in our minds, and it's not really, there's no dialogue, there's no, well, for example, what is someone who is an supposed to do if they can't express the things that they're thinking about and work through them? And if we don't have dialogue, making all these thoughts that people have go underground, so to speak, it doesn't make them go away. It doesn't work them out. It doesn't change people's beliefs. It doesn't change the way people perceive things, or you need to have the dialogue in order to move forward with.
I would argue it makes it worse.
Exactly.
Because who are you going to talk to about it? The
And
people
then,
who agree with you.
Not to mention, we should want to be able to identify the people that have these negative thoughts. We want those people to be outed, so that, one, we're safer from them potentially, and two, we can engage and help them grow, or us grow, or it doesn't help anything to just push everything down.
I was watching a panel on this, and what's that? Does anyone know that Harvard professor that got he was talking about some information, and I just got the thing for it. Is it Pinker? Does that ring a bell to anybody?
Yeah, the Harvard professor.
Yeah. Okay. And that's what he was saying. There are a lot of he's very left leaning, but
yeah, he's like the left leaning Jordan Peterson.
Sort of, yeah. And he was saying something about in academia, for one, this whole thing that you were talking about, that Christina was talking about, that by not talking about it, by not talking about these subjects, it only makes people that have that bent go underground and research it and have the one voice in their head, and not have anybody else talk to them or discuss these ideas. And they only you have these ideas, you will gravitate towards people that have the same ideas as you do. So that's why they're going to go into all these, they're going to search out people that have the same ideology that they have, and the ideology is only going to get more cemented in their head, because they won't have the dissenting view. And what he was saying is that he said that in I guess Harvard, wherever he's a Harvard professor, he said he has seen a lot of these, he called them alt-right people that are very, very bright, but they just play the game when they're in school, and they blend in because he said it's going to be, basically the concept of, suicidal to their careers if they come out as being quote unquote alt-right. But in these classrooms, there will be these people that are quote unquote alt-right that will just blend in, play the game. That's probably what you should have done, Matt, and gotten a good grade.
Still 4-pointed, dog.
I guess. Yeah. Could have been 4.5. No. But that's what he was saying. If it's so horrible, and the funny thing is the lady that was she was a journalist. She's like, but does that mean that we're gonna let Nazis have a place to debate? And I'm like, dude, you're just like not totally understanding at all what they're trying to say. You need to have this debate. You need to, as terrible as it sounds, you need to give people that have a dissenting view, even if they're Nazis, they have the ability to speak so that you can argue with them, so that you can debate with them, and so that you can have the exposure of these ideas so that people can see, oh yeah, this doesn't make sense. And yeah. Anyways,
just the idea that we're going to have people, we're going to isolate them into echo chambers and only radicalize their thoughts more, and that's going to be a good thing, is such a wild thought. And I think one of the things that Jordan Peterson said a while back, with Kathy, I can't remember what her name is, the So What You're Saying host lady,
All right.
was like, to think is to risk being offensive. I was like, damn, that's good. Like, if you any thought, I mean, like, he's like, she was being, grilling him. He's like, well, you certainly have no problem risk being offensive to me. It's been quite uncomfortable sitting here.
We keep name dropping Jordan Peterson. Does anyone want to give a quick who he is?
If you don't know who he is, get out of here.
I'm just saying, like, might be listening. Like,
offend
who
me
is
if you don't
this
know who
guy
he
they
is.
keep talking about?
He's I would summarize him with one. He used to be at Harvard. Now he's in Toronto, and he's a professor of clinical psychology. Practiced it for 20-something years, and has written multiple books and has become widely known on the internet as a pretty prolific articulator of more conservative ideas and right-leaning ideas. But more importantly, I think he would probably identify as the combatant against postmodernism and the foolishness of a lot of modern thought. That I think political correctness and social justice are kind of right down his alley, as far as he can shred some pretty. There's some pretty epic moments where he has taken people apart on YouTube and whatnot. Through debate and discourse. So definitely check them out if any interest in digging into a little bit more articulated version of conservative ideas.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. I think for me, the collectivism takes two forms, and I would say collectivism in my mind is the external version of collectivism is I don't have to see you as the individual because I can just see you as black, or I can just see you as gay, or I can just see you as a woman, or I can just see you as an Asian, or whatever version, as a Christian. I don't have to see you because I see your group. And I think that is the very thing we're trying to fix by making people into more groups. And so that's the external side where I develop this collective mindset for other people. And those labels, while they can be useful, they can be prisons as well. And then on the inside, what we were just talking about, I would call tribalism, right? of it's still collectivism, but it's now a more of a personal identity of I have my tribe. I actually was on Facebook this morning and came across a discussion on a spiritual topic about witnessing to people and how you get rejected out there in the public and people don't want to hear about Jesus and everything. And so then you have this common experience where you have this moment of rejection when you were trying to genuinely reach out, and I got rejected. And so I go back to my church and I tell my story about being rejected, and all these other rejected people share their stories with me, and we get to form an even larger tribe and an even better tribe. And now the opportunity for more people to join this tribe just shrinks, because now you have a common experience that nobody else can relate to. And then it shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, which is why churches aren't growing, because this is my tribe. And unless you're born into it or you marry into it or some random chance, there's the tribalism and the lack of growth inside the church, I would say, is directly proportionate to the overgrowth of political correctness and collectivism in general. That they are kind of a sliding scale. The more collective you are externally, the more tribal you are internally, because it's so much safer with my group that loves me. Because I go out there and I use the wrong word, I'm going to get murdered. Or I'm going to lose my job. I mean, literally, people losing. I don't know if you guys have the recent stuff with YouTube and censoring conservative voices. That there's people whose entire livelihoods have been dismissed because they've said the wrong things. And so, of course, you're going to then gather around people who don't murder you and don't stab you in the back and don't hate you. And then you're going to also collectively rah-rah against that other group who did it to you. And so now you're just going to deepen the trenches in which you don't like them and they don't like you. That's unsafe and this is safe. And it's all because of an inability to see the individual and to understand. I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm willing to sit down. If somebody tells me, hey, I would rather you call me this. Well, it's kind of just be a nice guy and be a nice. I just said a nice guy. Be a nice person, and call them what they've asked you to call them. Like, you don't have to push back. If a black man says, "Call me African American," okay, then don't be a jerk. Do that. Just be nice. Be kind. It's fine to pick the labels that you're comfortable with, but it's at the same time to immediately assume the moment someone calls you the wrong thing, that it was on purpose or it was mean-spirited or that is not helpful. And it does come down to me, the ability to see the individual and honor the individual. And if you're not able to honor the individual, then shame on you. Right?
You reminded me of a hashtag that I found on Twitter like a couple years ago, and I think it was like Real Clergy Stories or something like that. And I was just scrolling, because at the time I was a member of the clergy. And got to one point and just saw somebody like talking about how outraged they were that their staff wasn't putting together a Black Lives Matter, series. And I was just like, I like to identify people as, individual children of God. And basically, I got Skylar like, hey, look at this guy. Look at this guy. And she tagged a friend who wrote a book about how identifying your inner racist. And I was just like, huh? All right.
I know. I've been told so many times, because I will speak openly about this stuff. And I'd been told by people who love me, like, are you sure you're not? You should check to see if you're racist. And actually, the last time that I looked at somebody by the color of skin was years ago. The last time somebody asked me to look at the color of their skin. Right? So you look at it every day. I don't even pay attention to it.
Well, and you have a black friend, right? So you're good.
Well, that would go right with self-licensing. I've done my good deed. Now I can be a jerk.
And I meant that in jest. Nobody crucified me on that one.
People do use that as an excuse. So they're like, no, I've got black friends. I'm not racist. I have black friends. So, and they use it as moral licensing for whatever they're trying to do.
Yeah, if you Google it, a lot of it, the example they use is, well, I voted for Obama.
Yeah.
I'm not racist.
I chose my friends because they had a certain melanin count in their skin. So
Right.
I'm good.
I think that, I mean, it's pretty obvious that people that are quick to get offended, A, are carrying wounds
Yes.
from stuff, and B, are not secure in their identity. Plain and simple. Like, when you're secure in who you are, like you were saying earlier, the whole dolphin whatever thing, you're not that concerned about what people say. And so ultimately there's a lot of hurt people, a lot of people in pain, and we're trying to fix it with this. Like, this is not fixing it, like we've talked about already. It's not fixing it.
Are you saying that the law isn't fixing things?
Right? Exactly.
Almost like freedom is the way to salvation.
But what you were saying,
That we established there wasn't any salvation.
what you were saying earlier, Austin, though, about if people feel safe, and they don't feel like they're having to prove themselves, then they perform better, or they have better, whatever.
Or they perform normal.
Normal, yes. Right. So in that context, it would maybe seem like there's a space for this, because for making people feel safe with our words. Is that something that you feel like you were saying at all, or what was your
There
thought?
is actually, so stereotype threat is the negative. There actually is stereotype lift as well, which is they did the same tests, and the ones like where they it was Asian women that they were doing math with, and like when they talked about how women are less mathy than men, there was lower scores. When they talked about how Asians are more mathy than Americans, it was higher scores.
Right.
And so yes, there is an element of creating that safe space that I think we should strive for, and that's where I was going to go, because I'm pretty con on like all of the crap surrounding it. That's why I started out with, why are we doing this? And that's why I was going to go a little bit more on the pro side next time I got around. But yes, I think there are certainly pros to what we're trying to do.
Right. The question is it enough? Like, what, or is it, I mean, it makes it to some extent sound relevant to be quote unquote politically correct. So do we fake it till we make it, you think? But yet we also have been saying, like, faking it isn't really addressing the underlying issues, but yet someday, I mean, honestly though, like, I've thought about how much stuff is not okay to say now that was okay or not thought about maybe even 5 years ago.
Oh, dude, I was totally thinking about when, like,
media, basically
10 years from now, how crucified we'll get for whatever we say in this. There's no safe space in this podcast. Like, it's all going to get crucified.
I won't be able to be a president. Dang it.
I just came of age.
Dude, crap. No, hey, what I was going to say is, like, the problem here is, let's take it political. There is a party that is trying to make this a thing, and it's not going to go away because it's their tool.
Yeah,
it's a tool that they have.
It's always the tool of Marxism and communism.
They rely on it to get the votes. They want the drama to be there, and the people that follow them are people that, even though that they don't see the end game, they just see the froth, if you will. They see that, oh yeah, well, of course, I mean, I'm not a racist, I don't want to be a racist, and look at all the things that we need to pay for, and look at you need to feel bad because you were born with all this privilege, and you were born with this, so therefore you need to speak this way to appease your guilt. And the aim is to make this even more of a thing, because that's how they get votes. That's how keeping the drama up is how they stay viable, to be honest. And so until and let me say this though here, that I feel like the other side is kind of playing the same game now. They're trying to ride the coattails of it, and they see they're trying to appease the quote unquote masses also and play the same game. So that's that. There's until we realize what is going on as a country, and that this game is a game and is a tool to enslave and to divide our country. Until we realize, and again, I'm going to say this, not just one side, it's both sides now, but until we realize that that's what's going on as a collective, as a country, and realize that it's not furthering, it's just creating resentment and creating a way to give a moral license to one side to try to take away what the other side has, because they don't have any right to it, because it's what they were born with. I don't know, whatever. But until we realize what it is, then we're not going to move ahead.
Have you been listening to QAnon?
No. Well,
because that's one of the things that's been on QAnon is basically they want us divided. Because if the American public is divided, then the smallest itty-bitty little class of elites that all live around Washington, D.C. can keep the circus going. And we're arguing about the right words to use for gender pronouns, and they are stripping our rights away one bill at a time. And so the division is certainly both sides. But highly conspiracy theory of you. I'm just going.
But it's not. Yeah. That's what Jordan Peterson again. That's what he was saying in the sense. He says political correctness is, it's Marxism combined with, postmodernism, and so but. I'm gonna see if I can decipher my notes here, because he says he says Nietzsche predicted it, but he says, okay, that you have people that have a certain thing. Let's say they have some sort of, that you're a white male, so you have this sort of privilege, and so what he said was that resentment is generated because, let's say I'm a Latino or a black person and I see this white male, and that they have gotten all this stuff. So I have resentment towards the white male. And I resent you too, David. And that resentment, what it creates is criticism, and you want to the heck.
when writing like a fourth grader doesn't work anymore?
No, something fell on my head just out of the blue.
That was God smiting you.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's not like a gold feather.
Crap. Okay. So where it works is postmodernism, no perception is above any other perception. In other words, your reality cannot be above my reality. So therefore, I have the right to bring you down to where I am by taking your privilege, your reality. So that's how I do it, by saying that you are morally abhorrent because you are who you are, and I have more right. I have the same right to do and to have what you have. Therefore, by you having that and me not having that, then that's a moral problem. And so that is essentially the gist of political correctness, that you have something and that I don't have something, therefore you must be doing something wrong, therefore you must be morally abhorrent because you have something and I have the right to have what you have. But since I don't have it, then there's a problem. There's a morality problem.
And it is very much labeled as a morality problem. I know in the research I was doing around these different terms, moral self-licensing, stereotype, threat, all that stuff, there was a lot of stuff that was coming up about moral relativism. And it was all on the favor side of political correctness. That the morals are relative, and therefore all morals should be considered equal. Right. And I am very in the Christian sense, I'm very liberal that all things are permissible. Right. That's that Paul says that. And so in that, I'd actually agree that morals are relative to your upbringing. It's relative to a lot of things. But to then label somebody else as immoral is now the ultimate law, and you are the lawgiver. And that's I'm supposed to be okay with yours, but you're not okay with mine. And that's okay because I have more money than you. And so apparently I'm more of an evil asshole. Or whatever.
That's where the Marxism goes, that you have more, but therefore you must be an oppressor.
Right.
And therefore that's where that's where your morality goes out the window, that okay, you are an oppressor, you have more, you're an oppressor, you're not morally allowed to have more than I have.
I haven't oppressed anybody for at least a few weeks, but yeah, no, it's thing. That's sarcasm for anybody who listens to this episode 10 years from now. That was a joke.
And the narrative keeps getting beat into us over and over, and the end game is not visible to a lot of these people.
Well, it needs to be beat into you people.
Oh. What do you mean, you people?
I mean, it's been about an hour, so we should probably go around the circle.
Definitely. I think political correctness is all about putting your legalistic hat on and checking all the boxes. I did this, I'm a good person, I said all the right things. And really, it's taking a bigger look at the entire system. I think about education system where Marxism looks at the oppressor and the oppressee, and we have this big push in curriculum about no bullying and being safe, and then bullying is this word that we just throw out. You're bullying me, and really it's just, no, I'm making sure you play the game right. And so looking at that, and I see our children coming up with this mentality of, if you don't come in line with me, then you're not right. And with our whole dependency on social media and getting how many likes can I get, and that justification, it's only feeding into this bigger picture system of how can we be politically correct, how can we keep each other divided so we can continue losing our freedoms. And so wake up and fix yourself.
I think for me it comes down to, we're in a clash of societies that humanity's never had to deal with. Tribalism was okay because you needed it to survive. And collectivism was legit because it was largely in lines of language and money, and like nations versus nations. Well, they're French and we're English. I mean, and now you've got, especially in America, this melting pot, you've got cultures just from all over the world coming in this one place. And then you add the internet, and you've got how many countries and how many viewpoints and how many political and religious and everything represented on your Facebook feed or your Instagram or whatever. And so the clash of tribes is forcing a response. And while I believe political correctness is about one of the dumbest answers we've come up with to the modern problems of humanity, I do think the intention of it is needed, because there is a clash, and it is never been. And so I made a list of kind of concepts that I think could replace or should be at the heart of any effort. And that is, one is empathy, right? Understanding that people need to be, they're hurt, and then you need to be empathetic. One is respect/honor. One is curiosity, right? A lack of curiosity definitely shuts down discourse because you just already know it all. One is logic. Heaven forbid that we actually just think through stuff. And the other one that I had was giving yourself permission to be wrong. Because a lot of people are just so horrified by the idea that they've been wrong for 20 years that it takes a massive amount of shift for somebody to sit down in a debate and go, when was the last time you heard anybody on Facebook go, you know what? You're right. I was wrong. But you have to give yourself permission to be wrong and not have it be some sort of mark on your character that for 20 years you were wrong. As a matter of fact, let it be a mark on your character that you changed, because most people don't. And so I think those are the markers that I think could be positive towards trying to solve this thing. But political correctness itself is just so fear-based, and all the energy is going into continuing to lock people away from each other, and it's not working, and it's not going to work, and it could break a lot if we don't figure out how to kind of shift the energy of what we're trying to accomplish.
So I found a quote from a Dr. Janet Albrechtsen that says, you don't get to cry for freedom of speech, just to defend only those with whom you agree. Mm-hmm. And that really struck me, and it made me think. I saw on Facebook the other day, I think it was at a gay pride rally in New York, there was a guy that I don't think was gay, but he was wearing a sign that said free dad hugs. And so all these people that had been rejected by their fathers could go and just have a dad hug, and how so many people just lost it and just sobbed because of the pain and the rejection they had gone through. And I was like, wow, it really opened me up. Obviously, I haven't experienced that kind of rejection. So to be open to the dialogue, to be open, like normally I just I'll be honest, I kind of scroll past the gay pride stuff. But for some reason this caught me, and I'm like, okay, let me learn a little bit more about what's going on here in people's experience, and hearing people, being open to hear people's stories. If we can get past some of the rhetoric and some of the left-right and some of that kind of stuff, and hear people out, and be open to thinking new thoughts, sharing experiences. And that also means being willing to share our own experience. I haven't experienced discrimination. So for someone that has lived that their whole life, that may be a whole new thought. Like, wow, people think the way I do because I haven't experienced that. So everyone has their experience, and they have a reason for believing what they do. Otherwise, as you were saying, you believe what you do because you believe you're right. But being open at least to trusting that in other people, that they believe what they do because they think they're right, and there's a reason behind what they believe.
You're a woman. Are you sure you have the right to say that you've not been discriminated against? I feel like it's the wrong answer.
Basically, we need to continue expanding our ways of thinking, our understanding of other people. One of the videos I ran across, the lady was saying that changing people's minds, beliefs, society in general, we only have two tools, and that's persuasion or violence. So if we shut down the option of persuasion, obviously there's various ways you can persuade people, if you call it that, but talking about free speech generally. If you shut that down, then I think you can bring out violence. But I thought too, though, that I feel like the most powerful change, and this is something that you just spoke on, is love. And that's not just words, that's not violence, it's showing love. And I think that's the bottom line. Like you said, the hugs thing, that seems like something simple, and who would think that would really make that big of a difference? But it sounds like it was making it.
Mm-hmm. It was a conservative Christian fundamentalist that was doing it. It was someone who still disagreed with the
Sure.
quote unquote life choice of
But
homosexuality.
just loved people because they were hurting.
Yeah, we actually have a friend that did that with free mom hugs. So
Mhm.
they're- just love people. I don't feel like it has to be that.
Even if they're my enemy or I disagree with them.
I mean, David.
He takes a nap now.
I was looking for that passage where Jesus they were going to stone a woman that was caught in adultery, and he wrote on the ground, and he said, he who is without sin cast the first stone. And one by one they left, and then he asked her, where are those who accused you? And she said they're gone. And he said, nor do I accuse you. And now go and sin no more. I think that's how it goes. But the what I would call for people to do is kind of echo what JP says. Be kind. And I think we've just kind of been saying the same thing. But you need to love. You need to love. The I feel like political correctness, this whole concept, is made to divide, and that's what it has produced. And the way to counteract that is to love. There are so many stories, so many things to be gained by opening up our lives to other people, especially other people of different races, different ethnicities. There are so many stories that will enrich your life and make you thankful. And I feel like that's the antidote. That's what we need to be doing in this country. People of maybe a different orientation than you are, and showing them that you are not judging them, showing them that you are not condemning them, that you might not necessarily agree with them, but that doesn't matter, that we can still be that we can still be civil, we can still share life together. And so I feel like that's my call. That's the best way to counteract racism. That's the best way to counteract bigotry. Not have some sort of fabrication that makes us be so worried about what we're saying that we have to be very aware of who we are saying it to. So that's my 2 cents. Love more. Be kind.
Nice. There was I posted it on my Facebook feed from a buddy of mine named Tyler, and I think it just fits so well with what we've been talking about today. And he said, indignant rant about X. Come on, people. Why is X still a thing? It's the current year. And I responded that I too am outraged. I've already started my petition against this evil. I don't want to stand here and act like the world's fair, but to pick a few things so that we can then shame people who aren't on that train of thought in their life at this point, and then elevate ourselves so that we are on that train of thought, I think is silly. And, forcing our moral law on somebody else is not the answer. It's the answer you guys have all said. Love is. So don't fall for the trap of reaching for the law when you can just love. So that said, check us out on the social medias at Epic Ideas. Check out our Patreon account. We've got some goodies over there. What else? I should really kind of research how to end this thing sometime.
I like your rambling. It's good. It's the perfect end.
Outrage.
Outrage.
They know to X.
It's a trap.
I say good day.
It's a trap.